Hello, all you happy people! As I'm sure you all know, we're approaching the end of the year, which means it's time for my annual recap of the animated films that I saw, and I'm gonna be talking about my favorites. But before I get into my top 5, I figured I'd get to all the foreign and independent animated films I saw throughout the year. As I stated before, one of my major goals I set out was to branch my horizons and watch some more animation from other countries and smaller studios. In this year, I saw a lot. A whole lot. And I'm here to talk about my personal favorites that I finally got the chance to see this year. Now, like before, this is a subjective list. If you agree or disagree, that's totally fine. Film is a subjective art form after all. And also, I'm really going to be talking about the films that I personally like the most because I want to keep my channel a positive platform. And also, I'm going to be talking about only the movies I saw this year. There are animated films I wish I could have seen, like The Colors Within and The Concierge, but I sadly wasn't able to give it the chance to yet, so we're gonna have to wait and talk about them next year. And also, I will be talking about a few films that were based on shows in this video, and there might be some spoilers regarding the shows itself in them, so you've been warned. But anyway, let's get straight to the point. This is the 2024 Independent and Foreign Animated Movie Guide. Like before, I'll be listing these films in alphabetical order, so let's go. There's numerous animated films from France that I had the chance to see this year, and one of those films was Chicken for Linda. This film comes to us from the same creative team as The Girl Without Hands, which I saw earlier this year and I really liked. And while I don't think this new film is as good as that, I still think that it was a really fun time. It follows a single mother and her daughter, Linda, who end up getting into a fight about a mundane topic, only for the daughter to be right in the end. Hoping to make it up to her, the mother promises to do anything for Linda, who insists that her mother makes her chicken with peppers, a comfort dish made by her late father. However, a dilemma arises as all the stores are closed due to a strike, and the mother isn't able to get a chicken, and as a result, she ends up stealing a live chicken from a farmer, hoping to make the dish, and from there, wacky hijinks ensue. If there's one thing that I really think carries over from The Girl Without Hands, it's easily the animation, which is really pretty. It still has that paint stroke look of its predecessor, and this time goes a lot deeper with its colors, which really stick out and often goes into experimental and abstract territories. And complementing this are some funny and creative musical numbers that really get to show the animation shine brighter than before. These two are easily the biggest elements that really stand out about the film, and I do think the story is also just as fun. It kind of reminded me of Raising Arizona or The Blues Brothers, in which the characters have a simple goal that eventually turns into crimes, and then the film keeps building and building upon each insane decision the character makes. I love these kind of plots, and the film makes great use of them as it keeps going and going. However, I'm not going to sit here and say I completely love this film, as I do think the ending is a bit anticlimactic, and I will also admit that some of the characters are a bit one-note, mainly Linda. I know her desire to have the dish was strong, but sometimes I feel she came across more spoiled than I think the filmmakers were intending. But despite this, I still thought the film was tons of fun and is just worth watching for its animation and musical numbers alone. It's insane, creative, and just totally nutty. The kind of ingredients I love in a film. I'm giving Chicken for Linda an 8. Okay, let's get to one of the big ones you're wanting to hear me talk about. Flow, the animated film from Latvia directed by Jin Sibalotis. This is probably one of the most acclaimed animated films that's come out this year, and it's definitely one that got my attention from the get-go due to my love of visual storytelling, and also having seen Sibalotis' directorial debut, Away, earlier this year. I did think that film was decent, but it was held back by some limitations, though I did see he had the potential to blossom into a great filmmaker. And I feel that Flow definitely confirms this. It follows a black cat in a mysterious forest that is suddenly flooded by giant tidal waves, causing the world to be submerged in water. Hoping to stay afloat, the cat eventually finds a boat that has numerous other animals, including a capybara, a lemur, a Labrador retriever, and a secretary bird. And so, the rest of the film showcases the animals in this flooded world and encountering numerous wonders along the way. On a technical level, this film is gorgeous. It's easily one of the most captivating animated films I've seen this year, as we see these animals float across this mysterious flooded world, and the visuals and score alone really carry this. Like I said previously, this film is told entirely through its visuals alone, without a single word of dialogue, and it makes a great showcase on why a picture can tell 1,000 words, as the many sights we see in this film are so wondrous and spiritual. There are many numerous moments that stood out in the film that have so many deeper meanings, mainly scenes involving the cat and the bird, with one big scene being one of my absolute favorites of the year. It's so powerful and rich, and it just left me speechless, especially with the fantastic synthesizer score. It also helps that all the characters in the film have such dynamic personalities, and you can each tell what they're like and what they're all thinking without any dialogue. One of my favorite characters is probably the lemur, who has this hoarding obsession with strange knickknacks and doesn't want any of the other animals playing with them or touching them. I thought he was fun, and also thought that the cat was also quite an interesting protagonist and audience character as well. Zybal Lotus does understand how to make these animals work and give them a lot of personality. However, as much as I love this film, I'm not going to call it the complete masterpiece that many critics made it out to be, and that mainly has to come down to the film not really sticking the landing. The first two acts of the film are incredible and top-notch, but the third act kind of felt like a cop-out to me. I kind of get the impression that Zybal Lotus didn't know how to end the film, and the result just has the film kind of sputter out at the end. But despite this, the animation, score, characters, and feel of the film still makes this a compelling watch, and one certainly worth watching. If you have the chance to do so, I highly recommend it. It's an experience you're not going to forget. With that said, I'm going to give Flow a 9. Here's an animated film from 2023 that I finally got around to watching this year. Four Souls of Coyote, an animated film from Hungary. I first was made aware of this film last year when it was surprisingly nominated for the Annie Award for Best Independent Feature. And while the Annies have nominated some questionable choices for this award, I can say this film is one I can totally see why it got the honors. It focuses on a group of Native Americans living on a hilltop as an incoming oil pipeline is being built, where the chief tells his people a tale on how the world came to be, from the creation of land and life, how a devious coyote created humans, how mortality, weather, violence, and mating came about, as well as the eventual and devastating rise of Western civilization. This is a very haunting fable, and it truly benefits from its atmosphere. The story being told really does feel like an old tale passed on by a Native American chief as he weaves together a tragic tale on how life seemed perfect, but soon came undone, especially as the actions of a devious coyote suddenly does some damaging things to the creator's perfect world. I think one of the best moments of the film has to be the scene where death enters the world, as after the hungry coyote kills some innocent ducks, their blood seeps into the earth, which causes the trees and flowers to turn red, making the season grow colder. It's a haunting moment, and one that truly sticks out. It also helps that the animation is truly breathtaking as well. The film often reminded me of the films of Cartoon Saloon with the sketchy look of the characters, to the sort of wood-carved look to the backgrounds and nature. It really does have a lot of the same DNA that Wolfwalkers and The Secret of Kells did. That being said, the film doesn't live up to reach the full greatness, mainly due to how simple the characters are. They aren't all that deeply or compellingly written, and I think their conflicts and inner dynamic could have been strengthened. Not just that, the framing device of the story is also weak as well, and this ends up resulting in the film having a too safe ending. I think if this leaned more into the darkness and had a more melancholic ending, it could have been truly great. But as is, this film still does get by with its haunting atmosphere and animation alone, and it was one I really did enjoy watching. So with that, I'll give Four Souls of Coyote an 8. This year I managed to watch a lot more Japanese films, and there's a handful of anime that stood out to me. One of those films was The Imaginary, the latest animated film from Studio Ponic. This was the studio that was formed during Studio Ghibli's hiatus between 2014 and 2020 by some former Ghibli employees, and they put out 2 other films before this, including Mary and the Witch's Flower and the anthology film Modest Heroes, which I both really liked. And I can also say that I also really dug The Imaginary as well. It's based on the book by A.F. Harold and follows Roger, who is the imaginary friend of a girl named Amanda whom he has tons of adventures with. However, one day, an accident ends up getting Amanda potentially injured or possibly killed, and soon leads Roger to discover he's about to disappear and be forgotten. Hoping to stop this and find Amanda, Roger sets off into the night with the help of other imaginary friends while being chased by a creepy figure named Mr. Bunting. While the film might not live fully up to the heights of something like the works of Studio Ghibli, I can still say that I really did like this film, as it still continues to show Studio Ponic grow with each new film. For a film called The Imaginary, I can say the film is surely not lacking in imagination, as there are a lot of wondrous set pieces found throughout the film, as well as moments that are exceptionally dark and twisted. I have to give the film credit in the fact that it doesn't sugarcoat the idea of mortality and darkness, while also showcasing why the world needs a dose of pure imagination in it. The animation genuinely comes alive here, and there's also a lot of detail and vibrancy with how it's crafted. Plus, there's also a ton of great characters found here as well, including a mysterious cat named Zinzan, a feisty leader of the imaginary friends named Emily, as well as the creepy and twisted villain, Mr. Bunting. The film's script can at times come up short due to a bit of clunky exposition, as well as an opening scene that really wasn't that well written, but I think the film's imagination definitely makes this the best film about imaginary friends to come out this year. I mean, it's definitely better than the other film called Imaginary. But yeah, this one was cute. Definitely a sweet film. I'm gonna give The Imaginary an 8. Based on the children's book by Michael Morpurgo, Kensuke's Kingdom is a British animated adventure that follows a young British boy named Michael, who on a worldwide sailing trip with his family is washed overboard alongside his dog Stella, and ends up on what seems like a deserted island. However, it turns out he's not the only one on the island, as an elderly Japanese man named Kensuke has also lived on the island and seems mysterious, cold, and distant. And the film shows Michael grow a bond with the man, while also appreciating the nature on the island as he tries to figure out how to survive and if he'll ever see his family again. I didn't know much about this film going into it, apart from the fact that the author also wrote the book War Horse, as well as that the cast included actors like Cillian Murphy, Sally Hawkins, and Ken Watanabe, so I was very surprised to find how much I really liked this. It's a film that mostly relies on visual storytelling and has very little dialogue, as we see the young boy and the old man's friendship blossom despite neither one being able to speak each other's language, as well as how the film showcases the two trying to survive. The scene where Michael and Stella awaken on the island and try to figure out how to stay alive is fantastic filmmaking, and it really did make me think back to films like Castaway and Red Turtle when watching it. And there's also a brilliant scene when we learn Kensuke's backstory, which I won't spoil, but I will say it leaves a big emotional punch. It's also a beautiful showcase of animated nature as well, as there are moments where we see the two watch and observe the animals on the island, as well as the plants and insects, and I thought that these scenes were very well animated. That being said, I wasn't a huge fan of the character designs of Michael and his family. I don't know, something about the way their lips and noses were drawn just looked off to me. Not to mention, the entire prologue with this family on the boat wasn't very well written. However, the scenes set on the island are really good and easily worth watching for great storytelling with limited dialogue. So with that, I'm giving Kensuke's Kingdom an 8. I've seen plenty of great foreign animated films this year, but if I had to pick my absolute personal favorite, there's no doubt in my mind that my answer is Look Back. The film is based on a manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator of Chainsaw Man, and quite simply, this is a perfect film. It follows a young girl named Fujino who passes her time in school making crude manga drawings in the school paper, which she gets praised for. But one day, she's soon challenged when another girl named Kiyomoto puts her own manga drawings in the school paper, which are so perfectly drawn that it shocks Fujino by how crude her own work is. Soon after, Fujino wants to strive to become a better artist, and then soon enough meets the shut-in Kiyomoto, who reveals she's a massive fan of her work. And thus, a friendship and a blossoming artistic partnership emerges. One of my best friends showed me the manga earlier this year, and I thought that the manga was such a well-told story, and I was going to be very curious to see how well it translated to animation. And I can say that director Kiyotaka Oshimaya nailed it perfectly. Like I said, I think this is a perfect film where everything about it just works correctly, and there's not a single thing that I would change about it or improve. The film is basically a showcase on the means of struggling as an artist and what it means to create and inspire, as well as the friendships and challenges we get from other artists, and this is something that really struck a massive chord in me. Lately, I've been doing a lot of self-reflecting about my skills and crafts and trying to figure out how to better my own work, and I felt a lot of the same pains that both of these girls have faced. I think when you're an artist and you see someone's work that captures what you're going for and it does it so much better than you, it does kind of put that feeling of self-doubt in your mind and whether or not you can rise to the occasion. And this film really helms that so well while showcasing just what it means to create art. We might not have the full answer, but we do it just because it's what we can do. And the entire third act and finale of this film is so heartbreaking and tragic that it might get you teary-eyed. While it didn't personally get me, since I don't cry that often watching films, I know for a fact that it got others, including people in my theater, as there was someone that was really sniffling hard. It's also a beautifully animated film with simple and delicate animation, capturing evocative moods, as well as having some funny depictions of the girl's own manga, with the ones drawn by Fujino being the most hilarious of the bunch. I could go on and on about this film, but I think you get the idea. If there was any animated film I would highly recommend checking out the most on the list, this is the one. It's perfectly paced, perfectly animated, perfectly written, perfectly constructed. It's just perfect. One of the best of the decade, without a doubt. Look Back gets a well-deserved 10. We've gotten a handful of great animated cyberpunk films over the years, and the most recent one I can say that can be added among that list is Mars Express, which premiered back in Cannes in 2023. I love the cyberpunk aesthetic, and while I don't think this film reaches the absolute heights of a film like Blade Runner or Akira, I still thought this was a really good film. It takes place in the year 2200 when Mars has become a livable environment by humanity and follows a private detective named Aline Ruby and her android partner Carlos Rivera as they are assigned a case to look for a cybernetics jailbreaker whom has gone missing and pretty soon discover that this eventually has roots to the top of a cyber corporation. This is the kind of story that doesn't seem like it's breaking any new ground as it has been done before by other cyberpunk films. But one thing that really makes it work is how slickly it's directed and how gorgeous the animation is. This is a top-notch directed film, and it doesn't take its foot off the brake throughout its 90-minute runtime, resulting in a lot of deeply suspenseful set pieces and some great intense moments. One of the best moments involves the duo trying to be assassinated by some snipers while they're trapped in a car on a highway, and they have to figure out how to get out of there alive. There's a lot of intensity like this, and it's just thrilling. Plus, the characters are all very well written and have some deep flaws that are portrayed in an interesting fashion, with Aline having a drinking problem and trying to work on her sobriety, while Carlos is trying desperately to reconnect with his ex-wife and daughter, hoping to put his horrible actions he caused to them in the past. These are very genuine and sincere characters. While I did really love the film, I have to admit I was not a fan of the film's ending. In fact, I'm gonna be blunt, I actually outright disliked it. I'm all for dark and psychological endings, but I just have no idea what the ending of this film was going for, and I've read several theories trying to understand it, and quite honestly, I don't think I'll ever get it. It just doesn't work at all. However, the great suspense, deep characters, top-notch directing, and striking animation are more than enough to make this film another worthy entry into the cyberpunk genre, enough to where I can say this is a great watch and one I do still highly recommend. I'm giving Mars Express a 9. Another big film I was really looking forward to watching this year was Memoir of a Snail, the long-awaited follow-up film from the Oscar-winning Australian stop-motion director Adam Elliott. His last full-length film, Mary and Max, came out all the way back in 2009, and I really adored that film. It was easily one of the best animated films to come out in that decade, as it followed a sweet friendship between two misfit people, and I can say that Memoir of a Snail is even better. The film follows a young woman named Grace Puddle as she recounts her strange and tragic life and the various fortunes and misfortunes she faces. This includes her precious early childhood with her twin brother, her awkward teenage years with her foster family and bonding with a kind old woman, as well as her odd adult years trying to find love, all while collecting strange snail decorations, while her twin brother Gilbert faces his own struggles working in an apple orchard and being raised by a horrible fundamentalist family whom hate almost anything he does. This is a film that took 8 years to make, and I can say this is one that certainly feels like it, as there is so much passion that Adam Elliott put up on screen. It's a brilliant character study, and much like Mary and Max, I really connected to this one. And it mainly comes down to how great the writing is. The characters in this film are some of the most three-dimensional characters I've seen in an animated film this entire decade, and you really get to feel their enjoyment and pains, namely Grace and her twin brother Gilbert. Their high points are very cheerful and pleasant, while their low points are really sad and painful. But none of them feel forced in the slightest. It could have been very easy for this film to come across as emotionally manipulative, but that is certainly not the case, because every single character in this film is truly genuine and honest, which is what I think every film needs to be. No matter what kind of story you're making, all the characters need to feel like honest people you see in your life, and that is certainly the case here. And it all builds to having one of the best endings I've ever seen. It was so well earned, and it genuinely made me emotional. But it's not just the pains that makes this film endearing, it's also very funny. The comedy on display is just as vulgar, dark, and crass as you would expect from Adam Elliott, and it is hilarious. Mainly the stuff involving Grace's elderly friend Pinky. The various moments in her flashback showcasing stuff like how she lost her finger, and also just the activity she did in her life got me howling. Plus, the stop-motion animation is very subtle yet effective. Honestly, this is another fantastic high for Adam Elliott, and it is absolutely an essential watch. I know there's talk that this is probably going to get nominated for the Oscar, and I really hope it does, because it is one of the best stop-motion animated films ever made. I'm going to give Memoir of a Snail a 9. I've been trying to watch a few anime shows this year, and I've seen a handful of great ones, mainly to work up for the films based on them coming out. And one great show was Mononoke, a psychological horror show about a medicine seller outslaying evil creatures called Mononoke and trying to pin down the shape, truth, and form of why they came to be. And this year, after 17 years, a trilogy of films is on its way based on the show, with the first film debuting called Mononoke, The Phantom in the Rain. I was really excited to see how this show would be like in a film format, and I can say this film does not disappoint. It follows the medicine seller who travels to a woman's quarter of the Inner Chambers as two young girls wish to become maids. However, as their work begins to start, soon enough, something eerie and twisted coming through the chamber walls comes through, which the medicine seller realizes is a Mononoke, and he tries to figure out its shape, truth, and form before worse things happen in the chambers. This is a psychological horror film that really did get under my skin and has all the things I love about the show. It's a really twisted and disturbing tale about losing yourself within a workforce and how people can be stripped down from themselves, and it was really brilliant. The horror in this film does feel Kubrickian at times, and often reminded me of the brilliant psychological horror in The Shining. Plus, it also helps that the animation is incredible. The show used a lot of bright psychedelic colors and twisted visuals, and this film basically has it unrestrained. It basically goes all out and feels like the animation is turned up to 11. Plus, I also really like the characters, mainly the two maidens who work in the palace, and we just see the ways their minds are broken down as the story progresses. I do think the film does falter with just having a bit too many characters, as it is hard to keep full track on who's who, but for some great animated horror, this film is right up your alley. If you love the show, you're gonna love this movie, and I am so excited to see the next two installments. Mononoke, The Phantom in the Rain, gets a 9. Another anime show I've gotten into this year was also the superhero show My Hero Academia, which I also enjoyed, as it follows a young boy training at a superhero academy which trains people with superpowers, which the series calls quirks. I also did manage to see the 3 previous films, which I did all like, though the second film, Heroes Rising, is my personal favorite, and the only one I would call great. And a 4th film based on this series came out this year, entitled My Hero Academia, You're Next. And while it does come up short compared to the lines of the second film, I honestly thought it was still pretty fun. It follows the class of UA-1A as Deku and his friends try to hunt the criminals across Japan when a new villain arises that's an imposter of the retired superhero and Deku's idol and mentor, All Might, who kidnaps a girl with a strange empowering quirk alongside a ruthless mafia family. And so, Deku and his friends, alongside a man named Julio, have to figure out how to save the girl and stop the evil family. In my opinion, the strength of MHA mainly comes down to the bonds of the kids in the classroom and how well all of them are used. And I think I'll like a film more based on how well the class is used, and this film definitely allows the class more to shine. All the kids get to really showcase something in here, and each one of them gets to battle some cool villains in this film, and it's all a ton of fun. There's a lot of great action and moments in this film that really leave you on the edge of your seat, and the animation again shines brightly because of it. I also thought the Mafia family was fun, with one of them having a quirk that I found pretty twisted. Plus, the sidekick Deku teams up with, Julio, was also pretty cool and also had an interesting backstory and connection with the young kidnapped girl. That being said, I don't think this is my favorite MHA film for two reasons. One was that I thought the All Might imposter was kinda weak. The idea was interesting, but he wasn't the best executed of the villains in this film, although I liked him better than the villains in the third movie. And also, I thought that the climax went on way too long. It should have been trimmed. But I still thought this was a fun superhero film with great animation, action, and fun character moments. For MHA fans, this is pretty fun and I do recommend it, though I do encourage for newcomers to check out the earlier films and episodes of the manga or show before watching this. So with that, I'll give My Hero Academia You're Next an 8. Here's a film that's decisively lighter for this list. Puffin Rock and the New Friends, the latest animated film from Cartoon Saloon based on their children's show, Puffin Rock. As I stated before, I adore the works of Cartoon Saloon and think they're one of the best animation studios working today, as they always amaze me with each new film. And while this film isn't their best work, it still is a fun little film that showcases that even with something smaller and made for younger audiences, they still give it their all. It takes place on Puffin Rock and follows the Puffins, Una and Baba, as a new group of Puffins named Isabelle and Marvin make a new home on the island after their old home was destroyed by a storm. And from there, it just follows these characters on the island as they have to embrace an incoming storm and also have to figure out how to protect an egg from incoming predators. This film is, in a word, cute. It's very low stake and isn't exactly deep, but that's exactly its whole purpose. This film is just a charmer as it gives kids something educational without it coming across as preachy or trying to sell toys. It also has a likable cast of characters that are very fun and memorable, and they're all very well played. Mainly Eva Whittaker as Isabelle, who continues to shine after her exceptional debut as Maeve in Wolfwalkers. Though, it's the animation that really gets to shine most of all. Even with something made for younger audiences, Cartoon Saloon continues to give 110% to their animation, and this film really does remind me both of a children's book and the work of Mary Blair. It also allows them to continue to showcase their artistry, as the entire backstory of Isabelle, Marvin, and their family leaving their old island due to the storm is beautifully animated and well told. That being said, the film does have stumbles as it tries to be a musical and none of the songs are memorable or even that necessary. Plus, I think the structuring of the plot is a bit of a mess. But this was just the right kind of simple film I needed, and it's worth for anyone still starving for a new Cartoon Saloon project as we await their next film. It's charming and cute. What else can I say? I think I'll give Puffin Rock and the New Friends an 8. Alrighty, this is one of the biggest ones I've been dying to talk about ever since its Cannes premiere in 2023. Robot Dreams, the Oscar-nominated animated film from Spain. Ever since I saw the first clip of this film and also hearing the buzz as well as the Oscar nom, I have been anxious to watch this film and see how great it is, and I can say this one easily meets the hype. It takes place in an anthropomorphic animal version of New York City in 1986 and follows a lonely dog who decides to get a robot companion. After building the robot, the two become quick friends and share a strong bond as they live a happy life in New York. Maybe even more than friends. But that all changes when a fateful trip to the beach causes Robot to rust up and freeze, forcing Dog to leave him behind as the two have to ponder and wonder what will become of their lives. The film is based on a graphic novel written by Sarah Varon, and I actually did read the graphic novel in preparation for this film, and I can say this is one of those films I can say is easily better than the book. The book is great, don't get me wrong, but the movie really cuts a lot deeper at times, especially with the friendship between Dog and Robot. It's a lot stronger in the film, and it genuinely is what helps make the ending stick a lot harder than before. The visual storytelling on display is so strong, as we just see these characters process or experience events around them, and we grow attached to their journey and wonder if the two will ever meet up again. The emotional payoffs in the film are earned, and it's one that really makes your heart sing and also breaks it simultaneously. It's also a beautiful animated film to look at, with the film's depiction of New York City feeling so alive and special while capturing how grimy it was in the 1980s. There's so much personality that's coming out of this film, and it's more alive than ever. And if we're also talking about things that I loved in this film, we have to talk about the needle drop. You know, there have been a lot of bad uses of needle drops in animated films I've seen in the past few years. From the obnoxiously overused picks, to the songs that don't fit at all, to the morally reprehensible choices.
Now watch me whip. Now watch me nay-nay.
Still can't believe they thought that was a good idea. But this is the definition of a perfect needle drop. The song they used in the film is September by Earth, Wind & Fire, and on paper, that might seem like a cliche choice. It's been used in countless other films before this, but this is a film that completely dominates the song and changes the way you might hear it. The film really does truly understand how to use this song and pulls a deeper purpose out of it. The song is about remembering a happy time, and that's essentially what the film is mostly about. Pondering and remembrance. This is an example of a perfect needle drop in a film, and I think that this is what animated films should take note of. I think the only thing that doesn't fully work about the film is this one out of left field sequence involving a bowling alley. It was a weird scene, and honestly, I felt like it didn't fit the film at all. It didn't add anything to the narrative, it was exceptionally strange, and it just felt like a deleted scene that honestly should have been cut out. But the rest of the film is strong, powerful, and emotionally riveting that it easily carries it through. This is one of my absolute favorites of the decade so far, and one that easily deserved its Oscar nomination. It's great. I'm giving Robot Dreams a 9. Out of all the animated films I saw this year that came from France, the one that I really loved the most was Sirocco and the Kingdom of Winds. This was a film that, from its still images, immediately caught my eyes, and walking out of it, I can say this film did not disappoint. The film follows two sisters named Juliet and Carmen who are dropped off at their mother's friend's house who just so happens to be a children's book author. While there, the two discover one of the author's books that happens to be enchanted, and it transports them into a fantasy world and turns them into cats. From there, the two sisters have to figure out how to get out of the book with the help of a singer named Selma and a mysterious sorcerer named Sirocco. It's not a complicated plot, but it's absolutely dazzling in its presentation. For starters, this animation is fabulous. I love me some psychedelic animation, and this film delivers tremendously with its trippy visuals, surreal character designs, and also a lot of bright colors. It's a feast for the eyes. And while the filmmakers claim to have taken inspiration from Yellow Submarine, Moebius, and even Hayao Miyazaki, I personally thought that this film best resembled the work of Dr. Seuss. If you look at his illustrations in his books, or even the paintings that he made, they do have some surreal imagery found within them, and this film perfectly resembled that wonderful madness. It's a film that's not lacking in pure imagination. It's also a film that has excellent sound mixing. The score and sound design for this film was top-notch, and seeing it in theaters was an experience. The audience was so hypnotized by this sound that you could hear a pin drop in the theater watching it. It also has some great and memorable characters as well, and the theme of sisterhood was a strong one. While it could have been slightly more developed in the beginning, the bond between Juliet and Carmen could really be felt, and I thought it helped make the end goal that much more satisfying. Overall, this was easily one of my favorite foreign animated films I saw in theaters, and it's one I strongly recommend if you love trippy animation. It's basically the equivalent of chocolate with a fruit cream filling. Sweet, simple, stimulating, and utterly divine. I'm going to give Sirocco and the Kingdom of Winds a 9. And to wrap up my list, we have one last anime film based on a show. Spy Family Code White, the feature-length film based on the show Spy Family, which follows a family who's playing pretend as they all lead secret lives, with the father Lloyd being a spy, the mother Yor an assassin, the daughter Anya a telepath, and the dog Bond a prophet. The show is absolutely hilarious and has a lot of great espionage and thrills, and the film delivers everything that fans and newcomers want and more. It follows the Forger family going on a vacation in the Winter Mountains to look for an ingredient to help Anya at her boarding school, which helps Lloyd with his own secret mission. But soon enough, their plans start to go awry when Anya accidentally discovers a piece of the villain's plan, who wants to start a war between the two countries that they live in, and it's up to the family to stop the baddies and save the world before the villain can enact his evil plans. That's as simple as I can get without getting into deep spoilers, because this is a film that really should be seen without any knowledge of what it's about, because it's tons of fun. The comedy here is hilarious, the characters from the show all get to shine and have their moments, mainly the daughter Anya, who is as hilarious and crazy as usual, and it has some top-notch action. The entire third act of this film is phenomenal, and it has some of the best action I've seen all year. It's well crafted, the animation is exhilarating, all the characters are put to the test, and it's suspenseful as hell. Everything you could want in a great action film. Not just that, it's also a film that you can easily watch even if you haven't seen any episodes of the show. For any newcomer, this isn't a bad place to start if you want to see some wackiness alongside great action and espionage. I think the film's only downside lies with its editing. It is a little oddly stitched together at times with how the sequences are put in place, but when your sequences are as well crafted as they are, it's easy for me to forgive them. Overall, I thought this was a total blast and was one of the most fun films I've seen all year. And with that, I'm going to give Spy Family Code White a 9. And that concludes my picks for this year. Any foreign or independent animated films you liked that I didn't talk about? Let me know in the comments below. Until then, I'll be back here one last time to recap my top 5 favorite animated films of the year. Till next time, folks.